Hello and welcome to Radically Alive Women Edgecast. Leela Black, or I want to call you Leela now.
Thank you.
You just recently rebirthed yourself, or you keep rebirthing yourself, as I witness from the outside. And it is so appropriate because you are a rebirth business, well, a business rebirth guide.
Yeah, I think sometimes we don't know what to do with what to shed and what to keep. And I like to make that an intentional process so that I get to retain my true essence and I get to shed anything that's no longer resonant with who I've become. And I think this is true for all of us, whether we change our name or not. We get to really discern what parts of us are genuine and true and substantial and a reflection of our core essence, and what parts have been inherited, adopted, manufactured, constructed.
That is such a sacred process, an important process to do again and again and again. And
Mm.
to throw in that, perimenopause, which I find myself in, is such a strong invitation for that. And as I listen to you, it is, it doesn't have to happen just at that stage. It's actually an ongoing process.
Yeah, the life, death, rebirth cycle for me is like every month with my menses. It's every year for my birthday. It's every day with the sunrise and the sunset that I think as women, we feel like we get to these pivotal points where we feel like I just can't go on. And that's the point where we need to put something down or pick something up. And for me, that has created this incredible arc of continuity and vibrancy and self-permission giving, which I never saw mirrored around me, which I love. I love to like be a permission granter for that. So please.
Hey, this is already part of the topic we've come here together to speak about, which is women and money. And yeah, I'm welcoming you back or forward here because definitely you are a different version and I am a different version, but we did meet before 2 years ago, and I highly recommend for people to listen to that episode because it's really rich also. Um,
Mm.
to speak about women and money as this, I see your capacity to and honor your capacity to generate momentum, not just
Mm.
your shedding personality things about you, but also with the money. There's an art, it seems like there's an art to actually making that a regenerative source. And yeah,
I
it's
think this is Yeah, this is why rebirthing has become so pivotal for me to represent and reflect and guide and offer that any of us have that ability to put down what's no longer resonant and pick up what feels vibrant and true. I think, I just reconciled my zero for this last financial year, and this will be my 17th year in business. And I think I'm up to like 12 years of being GST registered and just honoring that the sovereign money and to really witness for myself, $800,000 that have moved through my hands, and that over that time I've used to bless my children and really provide for my family, but also create sacred space for my voice to emerge, for my work to emerge, for self-published books. I've just released an album with the incredible Coral Picture, and all of these creations are such a big investment. Really allowing myself to receive is a powerful way that I can keep being of service and contributing my voice, which I've come to learn there is no other voice like our voices. Your voice, Julia, there is no replica for it, and nothing can come close. Anyone who's listening, their voice in the world has absolutely no capacity for anyone to mimic or replicate. And I think we don't respect that enough because we're so used to ourselves, right? We're so acclimatized and accustomed to being in our own energy. But when someone else who's not familiar with what you represent is just being near you, they will change and you will change. And I think that for me, the trade of business is the medicine sharing that happens when something we've spent a lifetime procuring can then effortlessly transmute and move over to someone else. And then we likewise are changed by witnessing the transformation. I mean, that process I find endlessly fascinating, and I know that I will always be in business. because there's no other way. You know, my favorite quote is, what does the creation create in the creator? What we're creating in our business creates us. And I'm now 17 years in, and I'm happy to bring this creation to this interview today, Julia.
That's amazing. And I get that women do that also naturally. I see that in myself. I see that in women around me, is this sharing abundantly, sharing
Oh,
abundantly.
yeah. Oh, we're good.
I've witnessed a lot is that is brought together with monetary value. Many women seem to struggle with that I've encountered. And I struggle with that, to be honest. Yeah, is to make the abundance also something that flows back financially. And I think you've got something there. What comes up for you there?
I think we can't visibly see that we are resistant to receiving. I think that it's a very invisible thing, and sometimes we justify our own resistance to receive because we have a personal narrative around that. But the longer you witness other women refuse compliments, refuse help, be incapable of, if someone wants to pay for something, that they'll fight you, right? To not receive that coffee or flowers, whatever it might be. And I think it's really important to understand physiologically that we are receptacles, that we are in the receiving function with our vulva having an opening. This is, we are made to receive. And because energetically we're really not seen as the sovereign beings that we are, so much is put onto us, into us, right? And pushed. And all we can do is stop it. All we can do is resist, something coming in that we don't want, but then we can over polarize and resist too much. So, for any woman who knows that there is resistance to receiving, I always offer, the comforting reassurance that our grandmothers were the very first women in our ancestral line to actually receive their own money, have their own bank accounts. And I want to encourage anyone listening to this to actually go and talk to the women in your family, because I know that it was my grandmother, and I'm 42 now. So if a viewer is younger, that might be another generation. But honestly, it's so recent. And when I tried to do research on this, there's no acknowledgement of when women were able to have the right to receive money in their own bank account, because it was a non-thing. It wasn't even a thing. And if we can understand that our grandmothers didn't have their own money in their own hands, we can understand why we just default, right? And we're resistant to receive, because we haven't had that example showing us that we are worthy and deserving, and that there is a rightful place for receiving sacred income, money, financial abundance, so that we can then send more out into the world and really get into that reciprocity vortex of giving and receiving. Because, as you said, women are very generous with what they are willing to bestow. And that then becomes a dynamic giving, 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 and really having shame around receiving. And for me, there's no way I could have made it here if I didn't do the work transmuting that shame, taking the stories, ripping them apart, and just bringing utter destruction to the lies that I was fed, and really listening to my own heart to really discern what is the truth for me about money. And I would never project my belief of that onto anyone else. But I think it's very important that we do our own investigative work, right, to really uncover that and find the truth for ourselves, Julia.
How did you do that? How did you dismantle those stories and and transform the shame? Did you do that on your own? Did you do that with support from others?
I have a practice of hiring a professional every year to expand and grow in an area that I know I'm weak and deficient or shadowy or can't see or hold myself very well. So, definitely the input of some mentor, someone who I admire, who's a living embodiment of what I'm wanting to give myself. I find money an area where there aren't many living examples of the type of experience that I wanted for myself. So that was all of the professionals that I had hired. I was able to really, once you transmute one thing, it's kind of easy to transmute another thing because you just have to learn how to scrap something. How do you rip it up and kind of scrap it into 1,000 pieces? And the moment that you do that, if you can discern deception, lies, manipulation, or falsehood, whatever word resonates for you, once you can discern that, you can eradicate it from any area of your life. And so for me, I've got a daily journaling practice where I'm always peering in what ideas are influencing and informing me, and how do I bring destruction and death to them? And how do I create the receptivity within myself to then feel, sense, and know what's true? So we talk about money so casually in places, but it's never the topic of conversation, if you've noticed. Like, how often do we sit with our girlfriend and go, well, let's talk about money. How do you feel about receiving money? How much is in your bank account right now? What debt do you have? What GST did you pay last month? What's your annual income? Like, when do we ever sit down and like have a money conversation? Now, we may do that with our life partner, with our husband or our wife or our companion. But still, it's about managing the money. It's not about our belief system around money. And so if you really like dive into a white piece of paper and just go, money, and then just write down the ideas that surface for you, you'll start to tap this kind of endless stream, stories and narratives and experiences and indoctrination. And that's where you can, if you can hold it and you can look at it and you can go, that smells like shit. And very often it is. And it is the bullshit that was inherited because humans haven't really done a huge amount of investigation and reflection in this area. And more people are now, which is such an exciting time. If it doesn't feel good in your body, if your skin cringes, if your soul contracts, if you feel like foggy and clouded and contracted, you're dealing with a lie. And even if every person you've ever met has fed you that lie, it does not mean it's true for you.
Yeah, I'm just letting that sink in because it's powerful, and I can sense how you have walked through this fire to be able to actually really own that.
Mm. And I think it was shocking for me when I did make the transition 8 years ago to specifically serving women in business. And before that, I had worked in emotional healing. And it's not a large subject matter, but as soon as you enter the domain of business, it's a big subject matter. So remember, I'm very privy to the internal private conversations that people have with themselves about money and their business and their earning. And that has been deeply informative for me because it's taken away that shroud and that mystique that we shouldn't, we can't talk about money, that anyone who has money has a very clear conversation with themselves around money. And that was like, the further you go, the further you can go.
Yeah, what emerges for me, what I hear from your sharings is that you have a practice, you have practices in place. It's like you have a structure. And I like to look at it like, yeah, we're feminine beings and we have access to masculinity, and this is sort of the structure part. And what are some structures that have empowered you, or where you have empowered yourself basically to build that relationship with money?
Mm. I think this is a really fun part because this was just thinking my son was 1 going on 2 and he's 15 this year. So this is 14 years ago that I really faced the reality that I had a lot of lies and cloudedness and fear around money and what money meant. And then I would kind of run to it and then I would kind of halt and hesitate and you kind of turn my back on it from time to time because I just didn't have hands to receive it. And for anyone who knows the handless maiden tale from Clarissa Pinkola Estes's Women Who Run with Wolves, I think we've really experienced this dismemberment with money because it's a man-made construct, right? And we live in a man-made world and men were the holders of money. So there's lots of right narratives around that first to excavate. But I'm a very practical person. I'm a Taurian and I'm an earth sign, a Capricorn ascendant and Virgo moon. So for me, I wanted to kind of take matters into my own hands. So I'm like, right, if I'm resistant to money, fantastic. I'll place $50 in my own hand every week. And you travel with that in different ways. So some weeks I'd be like, you know, and I'd know exactly what I wanted and I'd go and get it and just, simmer and kind of let myself marinate in that experience of receiving and receiving safely on my own terms. And the rule, because I played this with my husband, that the rule was we couldn't use that money for bills, food, necessities. It literally had to be to fuel the self, right? So for me, it would be a haircut or an experience like a massage or something that had been very luxurious for me up until that time. And so the consistency of receiving and then imprinting, love and divine care and sacred stewardship and self-respect and trust in self, you know, practically imbuing myself with those experiences just reconditioned me and reconditioned me. And I don't need to do that anymore. My policy with myself is if I genuinely, on a soul level, really want something, need something, I require myself to give that to myself, which is a very confronting game to play because it challenges your capacity to receive, which is my game. I'm like, right. Oh, is that too much? Interesting, right? And for me, I now use resistance as confirmation. So if I'm backing up and I'm like, I simply couldn't, and you become so indignant. Oh, oh, I mustn't. And the fake English accent comes on. I'm like, woo! What would happen if you did? And typically, it takes me to new levels of belonging within myself, new heights of self-respect and self-adoration, new expansive realms of joy. And for me, I go, why are we not going there? What's there? Because I'll put the key and I'll unlock the chest. You know what I mean, Julia? Like, aren't we a bit curious? What's there when you move through that resistance when all of your body's clamping up and you're like, you're turning your head. Like it's just money. What's on the other side of letting yourself have that? And that for me, I think is a very practical, systematic game that I would recommend if it resonates for anyone, is a great playful place to kind of explore yourself on your own terms, right? And not have anyone else's opinion involved in that. I think that's been key for me. No one gets a voice on that. No one gets a say on that, right?
Yeah, I love it because it comes with so much joy and curiosity of exploring.
Yeah, and
Whole different dimension to money than what I learned originally, which is this: it's rigid, it's scarce, you work hard for it, and
yeah,
it's like you deserve it, and do you
deserve it.
the that's the whole shame thing coming in. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
it is,
yeah, yeah,
and
shame. So much shame around money. And what I realized, because we have to tap, this work is difficult, and I know that you're so devoted to looking in your inner world and really seeing and perceiving and coaxing our truth forward, that once you realize how much shame is actually there and how much I mean, that lights me up. If I start feeling like I'm like, oh, I'm going there. Do you know what I mean? It pushes me over the edge. And my mantra to myself is I will bow to no one. And if I'm bowing to my own internal fear, if I'm bowing to the stories that I've been given, if I'm bowing to my own fearful self, there's no end to that. So for me, and I know we both have warrior archetype in our I Ching patterning. For me, it's so very important to take a stance when the thought is there. Right, I'm not gonna, sometimes I'll need to shelve something for the day, but my practice is if I find something, I'll really face it in that day. And then I find that by doing that, days, weeks, months, years, they tend to flow and roll. And then you find you have this capacity, right? But we have to discern what's your motive? What is the motivation that's calling you to face your own resistance? And not only will I not bow to anyone, but the moment that I gave birth to my little girl, I looked at her. I had been buying secondhand clothes up until that point. Now, I still buy secondhand clothes. I love it. There's nothing against that. The difference is that that's all I could give myself prior to her birth, which is a different thing. And when I saw her, I was like, this little woman will not have a life of secondhand clothes. Now, that wasn't me making a decree on her behalf. That was me witnessing the truth of her essence. My little girl is very energetically sensitive. So, secondhand clothes that have moved through someone else's life energetically disagrees with her. And I knew that. She's now found the words to express that, Julia, but I was like, oh, that's that's not going down. And once you start seeing what you've been fed your whole life, I'm like, will not feed her that, you know? And so for me, definitely my daughter, definitely all of my own past selves, and then the refusal to bow to anyone. Because right when we have our own sovereign money on our own terms, wow, you don't have to be in agreement with anything that doesn't resonate with you, right?
Yeah.
I feel very cheeky right now. I feel very rebellious. I
Yeah.
love it.
It is rebellious. I think, like from what I witness, most of what you do is rebellious in a way.
Oh, always.
In terms of, rebellion can also be something that's bound by what is there, but I don't see it that way. I see it more like this sourcing. It's like more a sourcing than a rebellion. It's this by sourcing something that's authentically yours, that's authentically, honestly true for you. It's just not. It's the other. It's like the bullshit can fall away from there.
That's it. I think the rebellion is necessary when we realize how much shit we've been force-fed our whole lives. I think if you can't see that, you would not be listening to this interview because anyone in your realm or my realm, they've already recognized that. And I think my deep respect for not only misogyny, but internalized misogyny, the devaluing of women that is chronic in societies and family structures. I've escaped a religious structure, my own birth family, and my in-laws. And that was the most harrowing fire to walk through again and again, to say I will not surround myself with individuals who project their view of the world onto me. I can abide anyone who has a belief system that's differing to mine. That's no problem at all. But it's that projection, right? That I must follow their decree. No, absolutely not. Unwilling. And I have walked away from so much in order to free myself. I had no idea how hard it was going to be. And I think that's a part of the name change for me, Julia, is that the person that I was fought for 41 years to free me. And I had my most free year of my life last year. And I realized I had never been free. And there are still layers that I need to free myself in. I don't want to make out that I'm there, but escaping those structures because they're these places where people think that it's their prerogative to inform you and instruct you and educate you and endow you with their view of the world, which is just laced with lies.
Mhm. I have one more question kind of burning in me, which is that it's like money is a construct, right? It is in a way it's fake, and it is something that we have agreed on as society. Yeah,
Yes,
it
for
is
sure.
not real that I need money to eat. I need food to eat, and many people need money to buy food to eat. But we start gardening, we already need much less money, right? Like just the stories are so glued together and into a fake reality. And I remember already at the age of like 11 or something, I was like, I hate money. I think it's
Mm, yeah.
shit. And it
Yes.
came from an intrinsic knowing of it's not it's not how nature works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And do
Yeah.
you have anything about that yeah,
Oh, yeah,
these
I hear you.
stories of that women make up and these disempowered stories that women haven't had not access to money, but there's also something in women that knows, I think, that this is just a crutch or something.
Hmm. I think it's really liberating to really acknowledge the wisdom in that little girl. And for anyone listening, I think it's deeply educational to look at an actual note, any note, and it will say the words, "This is legal tender for." And that's what you're talking about, that it's printed, like it's printed paper. And we have socially agreed that that piece of printed paper, when it has the certain pictures in a certain way, that format, when someone who's authorized prints it, and it comes to us, that makes it real and that makes it money. And this is where the construct that other people have created, for me, I just deeply respected that this is the way of the world, that this construct that men have made is what I am required to live in at this point. And so the truth that it's fake connected with the truth that I'm still required to live within that construct. So my function always, which is why I really devote myself to rebirth with clients again and again, is that I'm here to dismantle the structure and what undermines me within that structure, and then utilize the structure to craft and build what I believe in. So my personal, association and construct around money is that I think seeing it as sovereign. I think there's never any compulsion within me or with anyone else. I will often say, like, feel free to pay your invoice, within this time, because I've imbued it with freedom and choice and divine stewardship, and really reconditioned myself that if I've been called to do the work that I've done, then I really trust for the heavens or the unseen or spirit, who, whatever name association each of us believes in, would resource me in order so that I can show up and do the thing that I can do. Because when I'm unresourced, I can't serve anyone. I'm dilapidated and flounder and I'm an emotional mess, and it's nasty. And so to be clear and informed and sovereign and free, I've really associated these things. And this idea that it's not real, you can still play the game, and so I play a very different game with money. And my favorite activity, and I think I've done this maybe 4 times now in community with women, is that I'll have $100 note, and I'll start with it and I'll get everyone around in a circle. And then I remind them that every time that they spend money, that $100 bill doesn't just get used once. So say if you can imagine a circle of women, Julia, you want to come here in your mind with me, that when I hand it to the next woman, mimicking, right, a trade that I'm investing in a massage or in skincare or whatever, a new beach ball, then she's going to receive that. And then she turns to the next woman and invests it in the next woman, right? And so practically, it allows our feminine heart to literally see that that $100 is worth far more than the $100 that it appears to be in the one transaction of the $100. Right? So say you've got 30 people passing that around a room, it's now transacted $3,000. But we're taught it's only 100, right? It's scarce, it's limited, it's only this. And so it's like, trepidatious to give ourselves what we want. But that $100 is not just being invested once, it's on and on, right? And so once we can start really tapping into there is an infinite supply of money and there is an infinite supply of resources, then we can become more wise stewards to discern what is of true value to me and really curate our discernment around that and really trust other women to do the same. Right. And anytime I can buy handmade, local, artisan, invest in women businesses, that's where I'm placing my sacred money to really feed and nurture that. And that for me, I feel so expansive when I think about every one of those women in that circle receiving that and then giving it to another woman, that we all get more. It's so fun.
Yeah, I love this invitation to be conscious in how I invest my sacred money
Mm.
for all women to take that on.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that $100 is not really $100.
Yeah, that is so
Yeah,
mind-blowing.
it's actually really, really big, and it's so worth, really sitting and really being with that. And so I've journeyed a few times with $100 note and had it on my vision board and had it on my altar. And this is where if we can deconstruct what we've been taught about it and impregnate it with our belief system, with our knowledge, with our knowing, and then generate that and then get into the system of generating that, we can have an entirely different experience of money, which allows us to have an entirely different experience of ourselves in this world.
Sounds like the final distinction.
Such a joyful topic. I'm, yeah, so, so grateful for your space holding for this conversation and for your transparency and willingness to really bring the vulnerability of the wisdom of that little girl and your own experiences with money and really be open to hearing, my viewpoint. And I feel so honored by that. And I love listening to the perspectives and viewpoints of others because they inform my own and we can discern what resonates and what doesn't so easily, you know?
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing so honestly, Leela.
Thank you for seeing me and supporting me.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing what offers are brewing in you. I'm going to link your website and any other relevant links. And I hope many women find you to shift their money patterns to rebirth their business.
Yeah,
And,
we can deconstruct anything and create something that honors us. When a woman feels sovereign, free, honored in her construct, she can go forward to be such a powerful force for good in the world. Mm.
and this is the time. So,
Mm. Reconstructing.
thank you.
Thank you.